this is really kind of dear to my heart because I have a lot of visible and invisible differences, right? Like right now, because I'm on the phone, I'm wearing my headset or on Zoom rather. You can't tell that I wear a cochlear implant and I wear a hearing aid. And there are a lot of times when I am moving in group settings and being deaf, being hard of hearing is still very new for me. So there are a lot of times when I'm moving in these settings where I have needs. I'm really clear on what my needs are for connection, for inclusion, for full participation in some of the dialogues that are happening. And I don't even name them. I'm afraid to name them almost because it bumps into the stories that we often have around, well, that's too much. I'm asking too much. I'm a burden on other people. And on the other side, when people are interacting with me, there's almost this idea that, well, we're tending to the needs of the majority. Well, what does that mean? If I'm only taking into account the needs of the majority, that means that immediately some people are not included. Some people's needs are not included. And when we add in the layer of how vulnerable it is to speak our needs when our conditions are invisible, then we're even less likely to have the support, to have the inclusion and belonging that we want. And so I run into this all the time. Like, just how do I navigate the different identities I have? Another one is my size, right? I'm a large woman. And I remember teaching in France. And when I walked into the setting, I looked at the chairs and I said, ooh, I'm not feeling comfortable with these chairs. I don't actually trust that these chairs will hold my body. And I was too afraid to say I'm not happy with these chairs. And I eventually spoke up and they brought in chairs for pretty much everyone that were more comfortable, were wider, were sturdier. It was great. But then on the last day, they decided to take all the chairs away and to put out these really cheap folding chairs again because it would help the facility to change, to turn over for the next group. And I didn't speak up. I didn't have a sense that my needs were being included and I didn't know how to bring them to the forefront again. And I sat in a chair and it collapsed under me. And you could imagine just like how much complexity came up, anger, shame, self-judgment. So many different things came up in that moment. And so this idea of like, how do we really attend to the need, both the needs that are clear, obvious, the needs that we're aware of because we're members of that group, and how do we find out the needs of people who we're not sharing an identity with, not sharing an experience with, and include those as well?
How do we? I don't want to offend someone in a group and point out, say, are there invisible things? I'm thinking of if I'm teaching a class or something, how would I present it? How would I open up the conversation? Are there any, I don't know, are there any invisible needs? Sounds a little intrusive or a little,
Well, actually, I don't actually believe it is because one of the challenges we have is that we have not normalized talking about these things. Why would it be a challenge to say, hey, who needs support for hearing? Who needs support for vision? Who needs support for anything? Like, it's only a challenge because we still have it as it's too much, it's a burden, it's a shame. We should talk about these things. So the more we explicitly ask, the more normalized it becomes. And I'm doing a training in a few weeks in Germany, and I've asked it included on the questionnaire that participants fill out before they even arrive. It's just a sentence that says, are there any accessibility or identity needs that you would like us to be aware of? And they get to say, it could be something like, and we get a range of responses. It could be, I'm hearing impaired. I would love it if we have a practice of everyone using a microphone, right? And that we stop when people start speaking without the microphone. To something like, I feel a little bit uncertain being vulnerable in front of white folks. We have some groups that are affinity groups where I trust that I'm going to be received. So just opening up the space and making it normal, easy, and that we're asking it of everyone, not just the people who we think might share an identity, is also part of what makes it normal. That it's normal for everyone to name what they need and not to assume that we know.
I love that. Can we make like that a rule, worldwide rule?
Yes, yes, yes.
Because two sides of that. I think if I'm a little bit uncomfortable asking the question because I don't want to put anybody on the spot where they might have to raise their hand and say, I'm hearing impaired or, I'm sight impaired or English isn't my first language or, whatever it is. So for me, it's kind of twofold. I'm hesitant to ask the question, but also worried that, okay, I don't want to feel like somebody has to speak up like they're like having to say whatever it is that maybe they're not comfortable saying whatever it is. Maybe they're uncomfortable letting people know that they struggle with something like hearing or sight or
Yes. So whenever possible, like, when we ask people to register for workshops or talks, they fill in their name. Just add that other question. It's like one more thing for them to fill in.
I
And
love that.
sometimes,
You've solved the problem before the problem ever arose.
exactly.